YouTube, Internet. This is How to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Written in my own hand lettering. And I'm going to read it to you, so please listen. It's a great story. We're on chapter 3, and that's faith. Visualization and the benefit and attainment of desire. The second step towards riches. Faith is the head chemist of the mind, and when faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration and translates it into its spiritual equivalent and transmits it into the infinite intelligence as the case of prayer. The emotions of love, faith, and sex are the most powerful of all the major emotions, of the major positive emotions, and when the three are blended, they have the effect of coloring the vibration of thought in such a way that it instantly reaches the subconscious mind, where it is changed into its spiritual equivalent and only form that induces a response from the infinite intelligence, love, and faith of the psychic, related to the spiritual side of man, and sex is purely biological and related only to the physical. The mixing or blending of these three emotions has the effect of opening up a direct line of communication with the finite thinking mind of man and infinite intelligence. This is how to develop faith. How to develop faith. There comes now a statement which will give a better understanding of the principle of autosuggestion. Assumes in the transmutation of desire into its physical or monetary equivalent, namely, faith is such of a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation. Faith is a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. As an illustration, consider the purpose for which you are presumably reading this book. The object is naturally to acquire the ability to transmute the intangible thought impulse of desire into its physical counterpart, money, by following the instructions laid down in the chapters on autosuggestion. You may convince the subconscious mind that your belief that you will receive that for which you ask, and it will act upon that belief, in which your subconscious mind passes back to you in the form of faith, followed by definite plans for procuring that which you desire. The method by which one develops faith where it does not already exist is extremely difficult to describe, almost as difficult to describe in fact as it would be described to the color red to a blind man who has never seen color. And has nothing which will compare what you desire and to describe to him. Faith is a state of mind which will and may develop at its own will. It is a state of mind which develops voluntarily through application and use of the principles. Repetition of affirmation to your orders to your subconscious mind is the only method of voluntary development of the emotion of faith. Perhaps the meaning may be clear through the following explanation as a way to man become a criminal, stated in the words of the famous criminologist. When men first come into contact with crime, they harbor it. If they remain in contact with crime for a long time, they become accustomed to it and endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they finally embrace it and become influenced by it. This is the equivalent of saying that any impulse of thought in which is repeated and passed to the subconscious mind is finally accepted and acted upon in the subconscious mind, which proceeds to translate that impulse into physical equivalent by the most practical procedure available. In connection with the consideration again to the statement, all thoughts which have been emotionalized, given feeling, and mixed with faith begin immediately to translate themselves into the physical equivalent or counterpart. The emotions or the feeling portions of the thoughts are the factors which give thoughts vitality, life, and action, and the emotions of the faith, love, sex, and others are then mixed with any thought impulse and give a greater action than any of these emotions can do singly. Not only do thought impulses which have been mixed with faith, but other those which have been mixed with positive emotions may reach the subconscious mind. From this statement, you will understand from the subconscious mind will translate into its physical equivalent, a thought impulse of positivity and constructive nature, just as it will into circumstances of your life. There are also millions of people who believe themselves to be doomed to poverty and failure because of some strange force over which they believe they have no control. They are the creators of their own misfortunes because they are of their negative beliefs, which have been picked up by their subconscious mind and translated into its physical equivalent. This is an appropriate place at which to suggest again to you that may be benefit of passing to your subconscious mind any desire which you wish to be translated into physical or monetary equivalent in a state of expectancy or belief that this transmutation will actually take place. Your belief or faith is the element which determines the action of your subconscious mind. This is nothing to hinder you from deceiving your subconscious mind when giving it instructions through autosuggestion, as Hill deceived his own subconscious mind to make his deceit more realistic. Conduct yourself as you would if you were already in possession of the material thing you are demanding when you call on to your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will transmute to its physical equivalent by most direct and practical means available in order at which to give you in a state of belief or faith that order will be carried out. Surely enough has been stated to giving a starting point from which, through experiment and practice, acquire the ability to mix faith with any order given to the subconscious mind. Perfection comes with practice. It does come mainly by reading instructions. If it be true that one may become a criminal by association with crime, then it is a known fact. It is equally true that one may develop faith by voluntary suggestions to the subconscious mind that one has faith. The mind comes finally to take on the nature of influences which dominate it. Understand this truth, and you will know why it is essential for you to encourage the positive emotions as dominating forces in your mind and eliminate the opposition. A mind dominated by positive emotions becomes favorable abode for the state of mind known as faith. A mind so dominated by at will gives the subconscious mind instructions which it will act upon and bring about immediately. Because faith is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. Faith is a state of mind in which is induced by self-suggestion. In language which any normal human being can understand, we will describe all that is known about the principle which faith may be developed where it may not already exist. Have faith in yourself, have faith in the infinite. Believe where you begin. Before we begin, you should be reminded that faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and actions to impulse of thought. The foregoing sentence is worth reading a second time, and a third, and a fourth. It is worth reading aloud. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all miracles and all the mysteries which cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote for failure. Faith is the element in the chemical which can be mixed with prayer, gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence, and faith is the element which transforms the ordinary vibration of thought created by the finite mind of man into the spiritual equivalent. At least you know it's there. Faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used by man. Every one of the foregoing statements is capable of proof. The proof is simple and easily demonstrated. It is wrapped up in the principle of autosuggestion. Let us center our attention, therefore, upon the subject of self-suggestion and find out what it is that it is capable of achieving. It is a well-known fact that one finally comes to believe whatever one repeats to oneself, focusing on statements of truth. A man must repeat the truth over and over again. He will eventually accept it as the truth. Moreover, he will believe it to be the truth. Every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts of which he permits to occupy his mind, through which a man deliberately places in his mind and he encourages with sympathy and wit, which he mixes with one or more of the emotions to constitute the motivating factors which direct and control his every movement, act, and deed. Comes now a very significant statement of truth. Thoughts which are mixed with any of the feelings of emotions constitute a magnetic force which attracts from the vibrations of the ether other similar or related thoughts. A thought thus magnetized with the emotion may be compared to a seed which, planted in fertile soil, germinates and grows and multiplies itself over and over again, into which has originally one small seed becomes countless of millions of seeds of the same brand. The other is a great cosmic eternal force of vibration. It is made both of destructive and constructive vibrations. It carries at all times vibrations of opposition and vibrations of prosperity, health, success, and happiness, just as surely as it carries the sounds of hundreds of orchestrations of music and hundreds of human voices, all which maintain their own individuality and means of identification through the medium of radio. From the great storehouse of the ether, the human mind is constantly attracting vibrations which harmonize with that which it dominates the human mind. Any thought or idea, plan, or purpose which holds one's mind and attracts from the vibrations of the ether a host of its relatives as these relatives to its own force and grows until it becomes the dominating, motivating master of the individual and those whose minds has been housed. Now let's go back to the starting point and become informed as to the original seed of thought. An idea or plan or purpose may be planted in the mind. This information is easily conveyed. Any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through the repetition of thought. This is why you are asked to write out a statement of your major purpose, definite chief aim, commit it to memory, and repeat it in audible words day after day until these vibrations of sound have reached your subconscious mind. We are what we are because of the vibrations of thought which we pick up and register through the stimuli of our daily environment. Resolve to throw off the influences of unfortunate environment and to build your life to order, taking inventory of mental assets. Any handicap could be surmounted and automatically translated into courage through the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. The application of this principle may be made through the simple arrangement of positive thought impulses stated in writing, memorized, and repeated until they become a part of the working equipment of the subconscious part of your mind. Here's the self-confidence formula. First, I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand myself persistent, continuous action towards its attainment, and I here now promise to render such action. Second, I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outwards physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts in my entirety on this time daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, therefore creating that in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. Third, I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. Therefore, I will devote all of my time daily demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. Fourth, I have clearly written down a description of the definite chief aim in life, and I will never stop trying to achieve it until I develop the sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. Fifth, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects, and I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use in the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate opposition because I have developed love for all of humanity. I will cause others to believe in me because I believe in them and I believe in myself. I will assign my name to this formula and commit it to memory and repeat it aloud with full faith that it will influence my thoughts and actions so that I will become a self-reliant and successful person. Back of this formula is the law of nature which man has not yet been able to explain. It has baffled scientists of all ages. The psychologists have named this law autosuggestion and let it go at that. A name by which one calls this law of little importance. The important fact about it is it works for the glory and the success of mankind, using it only constructively here. In this statement may be found in a very significant truth. It is destructively and it will destroy you just as readily. Those that go down in defeat and end their lives in poverty do so through the opposite use of the application of the principle of autosuggestion here. That was Carl. The cause may be found in the fact that impulses of thought have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical equivalent. The subconscious mind, the chemical laboratory in which all thought impulses are combined and may be ready for translation into physical reality, makes the distinction between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It works with the material you feed it. Through our thought impulses, uses the subconscious mind to translate it into a thought driven by courage and faith. That's your goal, okay? The pages of medical history are rich, which are the illustrations of a case of suggestive suicide. A man commits suicide through negative suggestion just as effectively as by any other means. In a Midwestern city, a man by the name of Joseph Grant, a bank official, borrowed a large sum of money, banks without the consent of the directors, and lost the money through gambling. One afternoon, the bank came and began to check the accounts. Grant left the bank, took a room in a local hotel, and when they found him 3 days later, he was lying in bed, wailing and moaning, repeating over and over these words, "My God, this will kill me. I cannot stand this disgrace." In a short time, he was dead. The doctors pronounced the case of one of mental suicide. Just as electricity will turn on the wheels of industry and render useful service if used constructively, so will the law of autosuggestion lead you to peace and prosperity. It's according to your degree of understanding and application of it. This statement is true, and the statement that is 2 and 2 are 4. Like the wind which carries the ship east, west, north, south, will lift you up accordingly to the way you set your sails of thought. The law of autosuggestion, through which any person may rise to the altitudes of achievement which stagger the imagination. It will be described in this following verse. If you think you are beaten, you aren't. If you think you dare, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't. If you almost certainly won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find success brings what the fellows will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stranger or faster man, but sooner or later the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Observe the words which have been emphasized, and you will catch the deep meaning which the poet had in mind. Somewhere in your makeup, perhaps the cells of your brain there, awakens a sleeping and a seed of achievement which once aroused and put into action, carrying you to heights such as you never hoped to attain. Just as a master musician may cause the most beautiful strains of music to pour forth from the strings of a violin, so you may arouse the genius which is born in your brain and cause it to drive you upward to whatever goal you may choose to wish. Abraham Lincoln was a failure at everything he tried until he was well past the age of 40. He was Mr. Nobody from nowhere until a great experience came into his life, aroused the sleeping genius within his heart and brain, and gave one of the world's really great men. That experience was mixed with the emotions of sorrow and love. It came from him through Anne Rutledge, the only woman who ever truly loved. It was a known fact that an emotion of love is closely akin to the state of mind in this faith, and for this reason, that love comes very near to translating one's thought impulses into the physical spiritual equivalent. During his work of research, the authors discovered from the analysts that of the life work and achievements of hundreds of men and outstanding accomplishments, that there was an influence of a woman's back of nearly every one of them. The emotion of faith in the human heart and brain creates a favorable field of magnetic attraction which causes an influx of the higher and finer vibrations which are afloat in the ether. If you wish evidence of this power of faith, study the achievements of men and women who are employed in it. The sum and substance of the teachings and achievements of Christ which have been made and interpreted as miracles were nothing more or less than faith. If you have any such phenomena as miracles, they were produced only through the state of mind known as faith. Let us consider the power of faith as it is now being demonstrated by a man who is well known to the civilization as Gandhi of India. In this man, the world has one of the most outstanding examples known as to the civilization of possibilities of faith. Gandhi wields more potential power than any man living at this time, and this despite the fact he has none of the orthodox tools of power. He had no home. He does not have one suit of clothes, but he does have power. How does he come by that power? He created it through his understanding in the principle of faith and through his ability to transplant that faith into the minds of 200 million people. Gandhi has accomplished through the influence of faith that which the strongest military power on earth cannot accomplish through the soldiers and military equipment. He accomplished the astounding feat of influencing 200 millions minds to coalesce and move in unison, a single mind. What other force on earth except faith could do such a much? There will come a day when employees as well as employees will discover the possibilities of faith. That day is dawning. The whole world has ample opportunity. Surely civilization has produced a sufficient number of intelligent human beings to make use of this great lesson which has taught the world. Out of this experience will arise leaders in business and industry who will profit by the example which Gandhi has set forth in the world, and will apply to business the same tactics which has used in building the greatest following known in the history of the world. These leaders will come from the rank and the file of the unknown men who now labor in the steel plants and coal and auto factories and in small towns and cities of America. Business is due for reform. Make no mistake about this. The methods of the past will be supplanted by the better principles of faith and cooperation. Men who labor will receive more than daily wages, and they will see dividends from the business the same as they saw the supply of the capital for the business. They must earn the right to the dividends. Moreover, this is more important, the thing of all, and this is the most important thing of all. They will be led by leaders who will understand and apply the principles employed by Gandhi. Excuse me. Only in this way may leaders get from their followers the spirit of full cooperation, which constitutes power in its highest and most enduring form. The watchword of future will be human happiness and contentment. And when this state of mind shall be attained, the production will take care of itself more effectively than anything else that has ever been accomplished, because it is the need for faith and cooperation in operating businesses and industry, and it will be both interesting and profitable to analyze any event which provides an excellent understanding of the method by which industrialists and businessmen accumulate great fortunes by giving before they give to get. By giving before they try to get. That's how they accumulate. The event chosen for this illustration dates back to 1900, when the United States Corporation was being formed. United States Steel Corporation was being formed. As you read this story, keep in mind these fundamental facts, and you will understand how ideas have been converted into huge fortunes. First, the huge United States Steel Corporation was born in the mind of Charles M. Schwab in the form of an idea he created through his imagination. Second, he mixed faith with his idea. Third, he formulated a plan for his transformation of this idea into physical and financial reality. Fourth, he put into his plan with the action of the famous speech at the University Club. Fifth, he applied the following, through which his plans would go through with persistence, and backed it with firm decision until it had been fully carried out. Sixth, he prepared and provided the way for success by a burning desire for success. If you are one of those who have often wondered how great fortunes are accumulated, this story of the creation of the United States Steel Corporation will be enlightening. If you have any doubt that men can think and grow rich, this story will dispel that doubt, because you can plainly see in the story of the United States Steel the application of major portions of the 13 principles described in this book. This outstanding description of the power of an idea was dramatically told by John Lowell in the New York World Telegram, with those who easily and decidedly reprinted. When the evening of December 12, 1900, some 80 of the nation's financial people gathered in the banquet hall of the University Club on Fifth Avenue to honor the young man from out of the West, and now have a half a dozen of the guests realize that they're about to witness. I don't think anyone realized that they're about to witness the most significant episode of American industrial history. John Edward Simmons and Charles Stuart Smith, their hearts were full of gratitude for the lavish hospitality bestowed on them by Mr. Charles Schwab during the recent visit to Pittsburgh, and he had arranged a dinner to introduce the 38-year-old steel man, to introduce him to a banking society, but they didn't expect him to stampede the convention. They warned him, in fact, that the bottoms within the New York stuffed shirts were not too responsive to oratory. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce this word. I really was. I have no influence, so oratory. I looked it up. It means a long speech, and that if he didn't want to bear the Stillmans and Harrimans and the Vanderbilts, he had better limit himself to 15 or 20 minutes of polite vaporings and let it go at that. Even John Pierpont Morgan, sitting in the right hand of Schwab as became his imperial dignity, intended to be graced at the banquet table with his presence only briefly. And so far as the press and the public were concerned, the whole affair was off so little moment, and not to mention it was found its way into print the next day. So the two hosts and their distinguished guests ate their way through the usual 7 or 8 courses. There was little conversation, and what there was, it was restrained. Few of the bankers and the brokers had met Schwab, whose career had flowered along the banks of the Mongolia, and none knew him well. But before the evenings was over, and with the money master Morgan Ware swept off the feet by the billion-dollar baby, the United States Steel Corporation was to be conceived. It's perhaps unfortunate for the sake of history that no record of the Charles Schwab speech at that dinner was ever made. He repeated some parts of the later date during a similar meeting of the Chicago bankers, and still later when the government brought suit to dissolve the Steel Trust, and he gave his own version from the United States. Of the remarks of the stimulated Morgan into the frenzy of activity, it is probable, however, that it was homely for the speech to somewhat be in here, full of it, threaded with wit, but aside from that, it had a force of effect upon billions of estimated capital that was represented by the drivers. After it was over, the gathering was still under the spell. Although Schwab had talked for 90 minutes, Morgan led the long speech to a recessed window where he was dangling his legs high, uncomfortable, and he seated talked for more over than an hour. The magic of the Schwab personality had been turned on full force, but there was more important, and what was more important and lasting to this full-fledged, clear-cut program he laid down for the ideas of the steel. Many other men had tried to interest Morgan in saving together a steel trust after the pattern had been cut by the wire and hoop sugar, rubber, whiskey, oil, and chewing gum companies and combinations. I think I'm going somewhere with this. John W. Gates, the gambler, had urged it, but Morgan distrusted him. The Moore boys and Bill and Jim and Chicago stock drivers who had glued together a matched trust and lousy corporation had urged it and failed. Albert H. Gary, an Century lawyer, wanted to foster it, but he wasn't big enough to be impressive until Schwab elegant J.P. Morgan to the heights from which he could visualize and see solid results. Of the most daring financial undertaking ever conceived, the project was regarded as delirious of a dream, as easy money-making crockpots. The financial magnetism that began a generation ago to attract thousands of small managed companies into large competition-crushing combinations had become operative in the steel world through the devices of the pirate John W. Gates. Always had formed the American Steel and Wire Company out of the chain of small concerns. They were concerned. And together with Morgan, and created the Federal Steel Company. The National Tub and American Bridge Companies were two more of Morgan's concerns, and the Moore brothers had them forsaken. And to match the cookie for business to the American Group, Tin Plate, Steel Hoop, Sheet Steel, and the National Steel Company. But besides that, Andrew Carnegie's gigantic vertical trust, a trust owned and operated by 53 partners, those other combinations who did not stand the test of time. They might combine to their heart's content, but the whole lot of them couldn't even make a dent in Carnegie's organization, and Morgan knew it. The eccentric old Scot knew it too. From the magnificent heights of the castle he had viewed for the first amusement, and then with the resentment, the attempts of Morgan's smaller companies to cut into his business. When the attempts became too bold, Carnegie's temper was translated into anger and retaliation. He decided to duplicate every mill owned by his rivals, and there he hadn't interested in the wire and hoops or sheet. Instead, he contented to sell such companies the raw steel and let them work into whatever shape they wanted. Now with Schwab as his chief able lieutenant, he planned to drive his enemies to the wall. So it was that in the speech of Charles M.W. Schwab, Morgan saw the answer to his problem, a combination. A trust without Carnegie, a giant of them all, would be no trust at all. A plum pudding, as one writer said, without the plums. Schwab's speech on the night of December 12, 1900 undoubtedly carried the influence, though not through the people of the vast Carnegie empires could be brought under the Morgan tent. He talked to the world of the future for steel, of recognition, of efficiency, of specialization, of the scrapping of unsuccessful mills and concentration of efforts, of flourishing properties, of economies in the ore traffic, or economies and overhead and administration departments of capturing foreign markets. More than that, he told the buccaneers among wherein lay the errors of the customer privacy. Their purposes are interfered and have been created monopolies and raises and pay themselves fat dividends off of privilege. Schwab commended that system in his heartiest manner. The short-sightedness of such policy, he told his hearers, lays in the fact that it is restricted. The market is in an era where everything cries for expansion. By cheapening the cost of steel, he argued and urged an ever-expanding market would be created. More uses for steel would be devised, and a goodly portion of the world trade could be captured. Actually, though, he did not know it. Schwab was the opposite of modern mass production. So the dinner of the university club came to an end. Morgan went home to think about the Schwab's rosy predictions. Schwab went back to Pittsburgh to run the steel business for the Carnegies, while Gary and the rest went back to their stock tickers to fiddle in intense anticipation on the next move. It was not long coming. It took Morgan about 1 week to digest the feast and reasons Schwab had placed before him. When he had assured himself no financial indigestion was the result, he sent for Schwab and found that young man rather coy. Mr. Carnegie, Schwab indicated, may not like it. He found it. He trusted his company, and the president had been flirting with the emperor of Wall Street, the street in which Carnegie was resolved never to tread. And then it was suggested by John W. Gates, the go-between, that is, Schwab, that happened to be in the Belleville in Philadelphia, and Morgan also happened to be there. When Schwab arrived, however, Morgan was inconceivably ill at his New York home. So on the elder man's pressing invitation, went to the New York, presented himself doors of the fingers of the financier's lobby in the library, and is now certain that e-commerce historians have professed that the belief that the beginning of the end of the drama, the stage was set by Andrew Carnegie, that the dinner at the famous speech, that Sunday night converse between Schwab and the Money King were mere events arranged by the Canning Scott. The truth is the opposite. When Schwab was called in to accept the deal, he didn't even know whether the little boss's Andrew was called was such a much, and he would listen to sell, and particularly to a group of men whom Andrew regarded as being endowed with something less than holiness. But Schwab did not take that into consideration. With him in his own handwriting, 6 sheets of copper plate, figures representing to his mind the physical worth and the potential earning capacity of every steel company he regarded as essential in the start of a new permanent steel. 4 men pondered over those figures all night. The chief, of course, was Morgan, steadfast in his belief in the divine right of money. Within his partner, Robert Bacon, a scholar and a gentleman. The third was John W. Gates, who Morgan scorned as a gambler and used as a tool. The fourth was Schwab, who knew more about the process of making money and selling steel than the whole group of men living. And throughout that conference, the Pittsburghers' figures were questioned. It might have been like this. If he said a company was worth so much, then it was worth that much and not much more. It was insistent too upon including in the combination only those concerns he nominated. He had conceived a corporation in which he would be in duplication, not even to satisfy the greed of his friends. He wanted to unload their companies upon the board of Morgan's shoulders, and thus he left out, by design, a number of larger concerns upon which the walruses and the carpenters of Wall Street had cast hungry eyes. When he came down, Morgan rose and stood fast, and only to one question remained. Do you think you can get him to sell and persuade like Andrew Carnegie? To sell? He asked. I can try, said Schwab. If you can get him to sell, I will undertake the matter and go on. And so go on. But would Carnegie sell? How much would he demand? Schwab thought about 320 million. What would he take in payment? Common or preferred stocks, bonds, cash? Nobody could raise $1/3 billion in cash. There was a golf game in January, fast cracking in St. Andrews Links in Westchester, with Andrew bundled up in a sweater against the cold, and Charlie taking, as is usual, time to keep his spirits up. But no world of business was mentioned until the pair sat down in the cozy warmth of the Carnegie cottage hard by. Then, with the same persuasiveness that hypnotized 80 millionaires at the University of Schwab Club, poured out the glittering promises of retirement and comfort for untold millions to satisfy the old man's social. Carnegie catapulted, wrote a figure on a slip of paper, handed it to Schwab and said, all right, that's what I'll sell for. This figure was approximately 400 million and was reached by taking 320 million mentioned by Schwab, a base figure, and adding 80 million to represent the increased capital over the previous 2 years. Later, on the deck of the transatlantic line, the Scotsman said carefully to Morgan, I wish I had asked for 100 million more. If you had asked for it, you had gotten it, Morgan told him carefully and cheerfully. There was an uproar, of course. A British correspondent cabled that the foreign steel world was appalled by the gigantic combination. President Hadley of Yale declared that unless trusts were regulated, the country might expect an emperor in Washington within the next 25 years. But the able stock manipulator Keene went at his work of shoveling the new stock at the public so vigorously that the excess water, estimated by some nearly 600 million, was absorbed in a twinkling. So Carnegie had his millions, and the Morgan Syndicate has 62 million for all his trouble, and all the boys from the Gates to Gary had their millions. The 38-year-old Schwab had his reward. He was made president of the new corporation and remained in control until 1930. The dramatic story of a big success, which he had just finished, was included in this book because it is the perfect illustration of the method by which desire can be transmuted into its physical equivalent. I imagine some readers will question the statement that a mere intangible desire can be converted into physical equivalent. Doubtless some will say you cannot convert nothing into something. The answer is the United States Steel. The giant organization was created in the mind of one man. The plan by which the organization was proved with the steel mills that gave financial stability and was created in the mind of the same man. His faith, his desire, his imagination, his persistence were the real ingredients that went into the United States Steel. The steel mills and the mechanical equipment by the corporation after it had been brought into legal existence were incidental, and by careful analysis were disclosed to the fact that the appraisal value of the properties acquired by the corporation increased in value by an estimated $600 million. By the same transaction was consolidated them under one management. In other words, Charles M. Schwab's idea plus faith, which he conveyed to the minds of J.P. Morgan and others, which has marketed for a profit of approximately $600 million. Not an insignificant sum for a single idea, huh? What happened to some of the men who took their share of the millions of dollars of profit by this transaction is a matter of which is not our concern. The important feature of the astounding achievement is that it serves as unquestionable evidence for the soundness of the philosophy described in this book, because this philosophy was the warp and the woof of the entire transaction. Moreover, the practicality of this philosophy has been established by the fact that the United States Steel Corporation prospered and became one of the richest and most powerful corporations in Americas, employing thousands of people, developing new uses for steel, and opening new markets, thus proving that the $600 million in profit which Schwab produced was earned. Riches began in the form of thought. The amount is only limited by the person whose mind is thoughts is put into motion. Faith removes limitations. Remember this when you're ready to bargain with life for whatever it is that you ask, because that is your price for having passed this way. Remember also that the man who created the United States Steel Corporation was practically unknown at the time. He was merely Andrew Carnegie's Man Friday until he gave birth to his famous idea. That is how he quickly rose to a position of power, fame, and riches. There are no limitations to the mind except those which we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought. That was chapter 3 on how to be rich, or how to think and grow rich. How to think and grow rich. Chapter 3, faith. My name is Devin, and thank you.